Hello, BookTube. At long last, finally, I give a review discussion video of Katie Edwards' The Last Son. As I've said several times before, I adore this novel, and I'm also immensely annoyed by this novel. So let's see if we can work out why. Or just lovingly rant about it. Whichever works. So basically, Rune St. John is the last son and heir of the Sun Throne, one of the Arcana, basically the noble houses of Atlantis. In this world, Atlantis was a real place that had remained hidden until the early mid-1900s and resulted in a world war that saw the island destroyed and the remaining Atlanteans relocated to the island of Nantucket off the coast of Massachusetts. To decorate New Atlantis, they basically bought up a lot of old, abandoned human buildings and magically transported them to Nantucket and repurposed them as homes and palaces and office buildings and what have you. Anyway, so Rune St. John is the last son and heir of the Sun Throne, which was destroyed about 20 years before the novel begins. And ever since then, he's been a ward and basically a mercenary for another of the Arcana, Lord Tower. So when the novel begins, he is participating in a multi-throne attack on the Lovers' Court, who have been up to some nefarious enterprises. Well, more nefarious than is acceptable for the Arcana. They seem to be typical for them to be getting into some pretty nefarious stuff. Anyway, during the raid, he runs into the head of the Lovers' Court, Lady Elena, and in exchange for a sigil, which are the magical artifacts that Atlanteans can use to store magical spells for when they need them, and of which Rune has very few. Elena expects Rune to take care of a package for her. That package happens to be her grandson, Max, or Matthias St. Valentine. Well, the first chapter over, which I think Katie Edwards has a fondness for the first chapter to be largely its own thing, its own short story or its own separate entity. And really, excepting for the introduction of Max, Matthias, the first chapter in the sigil, the first chapter really doesn't bear much on the rest of the book. Anyway, so the plot proper kicks off with Rune being summoned to Lord Tower and being tasked to find what happened to Lord Tower's godson, Nicholas St. Adams, who's the second son of the Justice Throne. So eventually, Rune finds out what happened, figures out where Adam's been taken, that he's been kidnapped, and where he's been held, and that there's some eldritch sorcerer guarding him, and who was behind it, and that they have other plans to take on other Arcana. There's a massive battle, so on and so forth. I love the plot. The world building, the plot are just phenomenal. I really quite love them. Where my issues with The Last Son come in is really the characterization, the character developmental plots, and the character interactions. So a big example is, and I think I've mentioned this previously, that Rune and Brand. Brand is, Brand is Rune's companion. He's a human who's been trained to the nth degree as a bodyguard, as a fighter, who is bonded magically to Rune. That they're assholes, basically. They are jerks of the highest order. I mean, yeah, there's a bit of humor to that. I mean, it's like a humorous jerk or asshole. But it can also be a little too much, particularly where, I mean, certain characters come in. Now, I have developed a bit of a soft spot, or Max is kind of my favorite character in the book. He's not as big of an asshole as some of the others, and he's not overly cute, although I don't particularly care for how Edwards characterizes him. But that's, yeah. Anyway, but Rune and Brand are abusive to him from the get-go. Max enters the house, and there's some bit of how he likes his clothes sorted and shelved, and he gets into a little bit of a spat with the housekeeper. How exactly Rune and Brand can afford a housekeeper, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, kind of, yeah, left out. But she goes and complains to Brand, and Brand promptly, after Max has taken a shower, dunks his head into a toilet. And from there, Rune basically gets him out of the toilet, his head out of the toilet, and then throws him into the shower. Still in nothing but a towel. I do not understand that scene. I don't understand where... Yeah, I mean, because it's like, what's the purpose of this scene? Because it undercuts what happens later, which is that while, okay, Rune and Brand kind of become acquainted with Max, they begin to kind of like him, even though they are still abusive to him. But it's like, why the hell does Max come to identify so tightly with them with this, and how they both treat him as the story progresses? It's like, yeah, first opportunity, I'm like, I'm going to run away. Or if I absolutely have to stay here, yeah, I'm basically, the first opportunity I get, I am gone. It just, I mean, now, which, I mean, does raise some questions further on as Max does become closer to Rune and Brand, of exactly what facilitates it. He is, so while looking for Adam, Rune comes across Adam's younger brother, Quinn, who is a seer. He can prophesize. And he basically gives Rune the clues he needs to eventually find his brother. And one of his instructions is to take Max to a nightclub where he is roofied and nearly assaulted. And it's like, which I'm assuming gives some sort of like hero worship infatuation eventually. And then later, Quinn gets Max to go to the final battle and nearly gets himself killed. So, yeah. I am not a huge fan of Quinn, even though he's like he's cute. I mean, and he's portrayed as being really, really cute and endearing and immature. But then he, yeah, basically told Max to, I mean, Rune to take Max into a situation where he would be roofied. He intended for that to happen, for those events to happen. And then with the battle, that there was a good chance Max would be killed. And yeah, it's just, and he's, and yeah, anyway. So yeah. So I mean, there's bits of that that kind of annoy me. It's largely the character interactions. Really, really annoys me. But anyway. But again, I mean, as annoyed as I can get with The Last Son, I do love it. I mean, the world building, excuse me, except for the surnames of the Arcana, it just, I'm not entirely sure what the rationale for that was. But I mean, I love the world building. I love the plot, minus the whole mishandling, I think, of some of the characterizations and some of their interactions. But anyway, I really love the book. Hopefully it gets a lot more attention than that I've known it's gotten. And hopefully The Hangsman the sequel, which is coming out in about a week from this coming Tuesday, is a success, and hopefully there are more in the series so that I can be incredibly passionate about, have these incredibly passionate reaction to, which is, I don't 100% like everything in the book, but that it has elicited such a passionate response from me that I've been going over this book. I've been thinking about it ever since I first read it in August when it came out last year. It's been stuck with me. When I reread it this year, again, it sticks with me. I'm constantly going over it, and whether or not I 100% like the book, that sticking with me, I think, is a sign that this is an incredibly successful book. Anyway, that was my thoughts, or that is my thoughts on, or some of my thoughts anyway, on Katie Edwards' The Last Son. Now I need to go put this and the books from my shelf back where they were. Excuse me, and I will talk to you again soon. Thank you, BookTube.